As you mentioned, mine is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit, and I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
But the basic idea was that we could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics.
Folks, we don't just have an obesity crisis, we have a malnutrition crisis. Most people are actually starving at the cellular level and they don't know it. The mass-produced foods simply don't have enough nutrients in them. So you stay hungry, you have those cravings, and you keep eating. This is where Green 85 by Chemical Free Body comes in. We drink it 2 times a day, and it makes all the difference because it floods our body with nutrients and our cells are actually nourished. This is where the cravings come down, you stop being hungry, and most people notice that they spend a lot less at the grocery store as well. If you want to give it a try, please visit chemicalfreebody.com/inspired. Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, January 19, 2026. We're going out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. Thank you for joining us everywhere on all the platforms, and a special thank you to Ronnie and Raymond, our wonderful moderators, and of course, my wise and amazing wife, Christine, as inspired in a live chat. All right, let's dive into today's show. There's so many changes happening. As a matter of fact, the first 19 days of this new fake Gregorian calendar year, 2026, feel like an entire year in and of itself. And there's so much noise that we could almost say the noise is the signal. So right now, in this very second, a few major shifts are unfolding that I think are very important to talk about. That's what we're going to do. But we need context. And I stumbled across this clip that aired on TV in April of 2019. April of 2019. It was part of the Project Runway, a fashion TV show, reality show. And this clip here allows us to set the stage, so to speak. Let's watch this together. My apologies. Let's do this again.
As soon as she walked out, I thought, oh, she's sick, but like sick in a good way. It's sick. The outfit is sick.
I loved COVID's look.
Thank you. Do you mind putting your mask back on?
Can you breathe in there?
A little bit.
Can you breathe in there?
A little bit. A little better like
It's a good look, but we want to keep you alive.
She's sick.
So this is in April of 2019 when that was actually the designer named COVID came in with that mask, and of course the rest is history. Why I played this clip is so we can understand that by the time that things hit the media, the social media, and are breaking news and are presented as things that are just developing, they have long already transpired in the background and been planned. This is what so many people forget. In the fog of war and the daily bombardments, they simply forget that this is how it always works. When in April of 2019, a fashion designer, young aspiring designer, in a TV show appears with a mask and the name of the designer is COVID, you know exactly what's going on. This is a real clip. This really happened. Okay, so now let's move on. Today was the beginning of the World Economic Forum's annual conference in Davos in Switzerland. It's where the self-proclaimed elites fly in with their private jets to tell us and tell the farmers that cow farts and their natural fertilizers are absolutely annihilating the climate not their private jets, of course not. So here's a little clip by Rebel News. You might know them. And that's from today. They were standing at the airport, kind of talking about this whole deal here. Let's watch this.
Ezra Levant here, along with my colleague Avi Yamini. We're at the Altenrhein Airport. It's a small private airport in Switzerland that's the closest to the Davos World Economic Forum conference. This is not a commercial airport like Zurich or Geneva where you can get a flight from Toronto or Melbourne. This is a private jet airport. We come here every year because it's so incredible to watch the masters of the universe, that's what I call them, who fly in private jets only. And some of them fly in a jet here and then take a helicopter for the last part of the journey to Davos to tell the rest of us, reduce your carbon footprint, don't eat so much meat, turn down your thermostat in the winter. Now, it's super foggy here now, so I don't know if they've temporarily paused landing the aircraft. On our way in, we saw about 6 aircraft parked here. One of the things that aircraft do is they land here, disgorge their VVIPs, take off again, and park at another airport where there's more room. So understand what they do. They fly in a private jet from, let's say, London to this Altenrhein private airport, let off their VVIPs, and they don't park. They go on another flight to park, then they take a flight back to pick up their VVIPs and go. I can't imagine a more carbon-intensive lifestyle, but that's how the rulers of the universe operate.
Over the last 5 years that we've been here, we've recorded their carbon footprint. We've asked them about how is this worth it, especially after the era of COVID, where we learnt how efficient Zoom is in comparison. And you know, I was wondering on the way up here, will this be the year that they finally practice what they preach? And as we're driving in, the reaction you were having to seeing that many private jets parked here, showing us that this year, in fact, if anything, it possibly has more jets than ever.
You know, it's sort of fun to be a plane spotter, and I don't know if we can pick it up on the camera. This plastic window, this private airport is so media friendly. I gotta give them a big thank you. I don't know if Air Force One is gonna land here, if this is not high security enough. I don't know how he's getting here.
I heard it's via Greenland, I'm not sure.
There's so many private aircraft that come here in the 1 week of Davos. It's enough to keep the lights on.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that when we were physically walking into this small complex, this is a very tiny airport, you saw 3 or 4 VIP drivers waiting to take their passengers.
Yeah, in the black limos. And it's a tiny airport, and I don't know if you saw it on the way in, we'll film it on the way out. They have sort of a welcome Davos delegates with some free snacks, as if they're not having free snacks on the private jets. So the fact that there are, I think, 3 or 4 black limos at the front either tells me they're just hanging out here because they have nowhere else to go, or they are waiting for a jet that is about to arrive in the next, I don't know, half an hour.
I'm sorry, mic was off. They're showing really in a good way the irony of this clown show. But Davos is really the center of the world right now in terms of where the powerful are and what they're discussing this year in the spirit of dialogue. It's what they're saying, dialogue amongst themselves, not with the people. And you know, the CEO, the new CEO of the World Economic Forum, it's not Klaus Schwab anymore, said in the opening speech that they're not there to react, they're there to orchestrate. Well, duh, haven't we, figured that one out? So we thought that it would be good to play a little top 10 of the quotes from the last years of the World Economic Forum meetings before we go into major financial news, like really major financial news, major geopolitical news, some really big ones, and sort of things that we really need to keep an eye on because they're going to change in fundamental ways how society functions, how money functions, and this is all happening right now as we speak. But first, let's watch this compilation.
You can argue in the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations.
You do not even have to have elections anymore because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
Our primary mission is, in fact, to set a global standard for the world for behavior.
What we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, is that we penetrate the cabinets.
You want the function, you want the service, right? Why do you want to own a cell phone if you can just lease it? And if you lease, why shouldn't you lease your refrigerator or your washing machine or your dishwasher? Or why do you want to own it?
I propose putting an end to anonymity on social media.
If 1 billion people stop eating meat, I tell you, it has a big impact.
Can you imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains? And we measure your brain waves.
There's some really interesting research that we can plant false memories in the brain. People believing that they've been at Disney World with characters who are not Disney characters, taking photographs with those characters.
And substituting humans for machines is going to be far easier in those countries that have declining populations.
First, we so penetrate the brain and your thoughts, and then we control everything. Yes, it's it is like a parallel universe. It's like they exist in a different way of thinking, being, and of course they are. But there's a perception that a perception that this is one group of people, the so-called globalists, and that then there are all these other powers and they're somehow at odds with each other. And if you really believe that, I have some oceanfront property in Arizona for purchase, if you're interested. The truth about all these groups is that they're all interconnected and not in some mysterious ways, very openly. And whether it doesn't matter what head of state we're talking about, it doesn't matter what power group or party we're talking about, they are all connected. And, if you want to get the fine print, if you want to get the receipts and the proof, David Icke's recent book, The Roadmap, has a couple chapters really dedicated to the interconnectedness of all these groups and how the media fights and these feuds are really mostly just show feuds. They're there to keep the people thinking that there is an antagonist, and that there is sort of that you have opposition, and that you have all this, that somebody's actually they're representing your interests, but they're not. So this week at Davos, I'm sure we're going to get a lot more speeches and outrageous things, because this is where they are basically beginning to prime the public for all the changes that are coming. One significant one, I think that we can absolutely expect in Davos this year. Let me pull this up for you. Is this one? As you can see, this is the USA House this year, and the USA is sending a delegation of 300 people to Davos, or has sent. And tomorrow, President Trump will have a speech at Davos. But as you can see here, and we circled this, Ripple is one of the sponsors of the USA House. Ripple being an entire new infrastructure for international global financial settlements. Many have heard of XRP, sort of their cryptocurrency, but it's a much bigger technology. And the CEO of Ripple has been all over media, is also at Davos. And basically, I think one of the big signals in the financial world is that they're ready. They're ready to go fully on the chain. They're ready to begin shifting over to crypto, stablecoin, blockchain, tokenization. All of these things are terms that most people have heard about but don't really fully understand. But it's beginning to happen on a big scale. So, in Europe, really, it's an official CBDC. Here in the United States, it is being sold as stablecoin. because they said they're not going to do a central bank digital currency, but it's stablecoin and crypto. But at the end of the day, all pretty much, in terms of full transparency, no more privacy, every interaction traceable, every transaction traceable, all these things, all the fundamental invasions of privacy still fully apply. And as always, there's an arbiter, and it's almost always some agency or representative of the government that ultimately has sort of final control of this. So this is what we're seeing. It's happening. So I think 2026, it's happening right now, and this year is going to be the full rollout of the new financial system, if you will. So also an announcement that was made today is that the New York Stock Exchange is going to have a 24/7 tokenized trading platform, tokenized security tradings platform. So they're going on the chain, and there we go into this term of tokenization, which is basically what it means is that every real world asset, in addition, of course, digital assets, of course, but every real world asset is on the blockchain and has a digital representation, a tokenization. And what that means is that basically from here on out, what's going to become the standard, and it was announced by the let's play this clip. It was announced by the SEC Security Exchange Commission head Atkins. He said this:
banks and the brokers out there today moving increasingly toward tokenization?
Oh, absolutely. And it's the way the world will be, here in the, maybe not even in 10 years, maybe even a lot less time, maybe a couple of years from now. So I think that all of this modernization of the markets, I think, is good.
So, tokenization, and this is something that is already happening, but most people have no idea. And I put this together, and I'm going to literally read it so it can really sink in, okay? Tokenization is the process of turning real-world things like money, property, or access into digital tokens that can be owned and transferred online, usually on a blockchain that records who owns what, okay? So there's a fully transparent record, and this can be anything. This can be land, this can be real estate, commercial, this can be cars, this can be anything that you could possibly own. It allows assets to be broken into small digital pieces. This is where it gets very, very problematic, and moved instantly, making transactions faster and more global. The biggest risk for everyday people is that this ownership can become conditional, meaning control depends on digital systems, platforms, and rules they don't manage, meaning you don't manage. If tokens can be tracked, restricted, frozen, or revoked through software, people may believe they own something while actually only having permission to use it, shifting real ownership into a form of controlled access. And this is just one of the dangers of tokenization, is that, first off, to have access to the system, digital ID is, you don't even have to ask. Clearly, it must go through digital ID. How could you otherwise prove that you are who you are to manage your assets? But what if you don't want digital ID, right? What if you oppose this entire completely transparent system? What if a big corporation somehow wants to price people out of ownership altogether, as they have been doing, and rather than having to go through the tedious process of setting up real estate companies that go out and house after house after house, buy them up in neighborhoods, and then sell them back at a higher price to themselves so they can drive up property taxes and such things, they could now do this with the push of a button and basically own entire neighborhoods because they buy the tokens online. What if you have made a critical social media post and you're timed out from trading your tokens that you own, and because of that you didn't pay an obligation, and now the bank or whoever you owe money to can simply take your home or pieces of your home. You can see how this is and it's a completely mad system, but this is what we're going into. And this is what's beginning to be traded 24/7 on the New York Stock Exchange. Sometime this year, this will go live. So this is the beginning of this new financial system. It's now happening. It's going live, and whoa, well, we're in for some massive changes. People have various opinions about it. Some are positioning themselves to capitalize on it. Others are pulling out completely, or seeking other ways. It's just something to know and be aware of. This is not in the future. This is happening. Interesting, other things that happen is, who would have thought that this was going to be a headline? The Bank of England must plan for financial crisis sparked by aliens. It's what a former analyst told the central bank, that if there is an announcement of, well, how should I say this? Non-human presence, non-human activity of any kind, then this analyst has basically predicted through models that there was going to be some massive disruptions in the banking system, and so they must plan for that. Yeah, this is 2026. Banks now prepared to plan for alien announcements to make sure there are no disruptions. Yep, folks, this is where we are. And then, of course, there's a big subject of, people are all basically going crazy about the renewed media frenzy and announcements over Greenland and Canada, and how the United States plans to take over Greenland, purchase Greenland completely and totally, and also make Canada a 51st state, basically have control over both these countries. Now, the current rationale is that it's needed for the Golden Dome, this highly sophisticated defense shield, and that the two countries are needed for the protection of the free world and all these things. However, if we go back to the 1970s, this is a proposal by the Club of Rome, which was an extension of the Committee of 300. Committee of 300, if you know, an extremely powerful old organization. I think goes back to the 1700s. And of course, these organizations, again, go back to other organizations that are much older. But basically, a proposal by the Club of Rome was to divide the world into 10 kingdoms, all ultimately controlled by a global system. And these 10 kingdoms, one of the kingdoms would be the North American Union, if you will. And look at that. Isn't that interesting? You have the United States, you have Canada, you have Greenland, all in the same color, number one. So did the Club of Rome think about the Golden Dome? I don't know. I don't know if they talked about the Golden Dome, but interestingly enough, these quote unquote globalist organizations talked about these things back then. But not only back then, let's go back 30 years earlier. Okay. This is a map. Let me blow this up for you. A New World Order map from 1942. And this was supposedly, allegedly published by a guy named Maurice Gomberg, who is an obscure figure that not really much is known about him. However, this is a similar concept of the unions of the kingdoms, if you will. And this was proposed in 1942. And it has, so there's a congressional record in a congressional library, in the Library of Congress, there's a record. And this map is in there with a manifesto that I would encourage everyone to read. It's available at this link that we put down here, Wikisource, or you can just put in Wikisource New World Map. You will probably find it from 1942. Please read the manifesto. It's very interesting because when you read that manifesto, it's from a very America-centric perspective, a USA-centric perspective. And interestingly enough, even though from a different angle, it still proposes much of the same ideas than the very globalist Club of Rome presented. And so the question is there anyone actually in world politics, in high positions, actually opposed to these ideas? Or are they simply in somewhat of a quarrel over who should be the leading entity? And I think it's become clear by now that what is being built is a technocratic, means technology centered global control system. And the technocratic society is something that was I believe co-founded, but at least significantly influenced by Elon Musk's grandfather. And this is a movement that wanted to move away from politics, wanted to move away from democracy as we understand it, wanted to move away from governance by representation to governance by a technological order where everything is where technology is at the center of distribution, of production, of everything, and it's basically a completely planned technological economy. And maybe if we take into account what Peter Thiel said in 2010, Peter Thiel being one of the founders of Palantir, and a great friend. I don't know if he's a great friend of the president's. I know he's a great friend and mentor to J.D. Vance, the vice president. And he said this in 2010. Let's listen.
Basic idea was that we could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics. And
yeah, it's, to say this in such a matter of fact, you would have to constantly beg people and plead, and they're never going to agree with you, and we could never get this done because we're in such a minority, we the technocrats, that through technology we can basically eliminate that. And this guy who said this 15 years ago is now in with the of the highest elites in American politics. Palantir is a big contractor of the U.S. government, providing a lot of AI surveillance, AI data mining technology, and Peter Thiel being one of the founders with Elon Musk of PayPal, part of the quote unquote PayPal mafia. So you have all these folks, these big tech folks are now basically the new elite, if you will, and they don't know borders. They talk about borders and they talk about border control, but they don't know borders. They're not interested in borders. It's borderless technology and it's borderless thinking. And the big problem that I have with this is I don't have a problem with borderless thinking. I don't have a problem with an idea that humanity will at some point reach more union again, based on truth, based on experienced and lived and known truth in freedom. Like that's where we can get through freedom. But that's not what these folks believe in. They actually believe in a even though they talk differently, but actually what they believe is in a technological totalitarian order. And it's unbelievable how far they've already taken this, right? So this is where the world sort of stands, where the big trends are. And here's a little clip by one of the most prominent tech investors out there who visited Tesla's Optimus lab, where the Optimus AI robot, is being produced that's very, very soon going to hit the markets. And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I don't want to name drop, but I went 2 Sundays ago, I went to Tesla with Elon, and I went and visited the Optimus lab. There were a large number of people working on a Sunday at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And I saw Optimus 3. I can tell you now, nobody will remember that Tesla ever made a car. They will only remember the Optimus, and that he is going to make 1 billion of those. And it is going to be the most transformative technology product ever made in the history of humanity, because what LLMs are going to enable those products to do is understand the world and then do things in the world that we don't want to do.
Yeah.
I believe it'll be a 1-to-1 ratio of humans to Optimus, and I think he's already won, but I don't want to speak out of school.
If you paid close attention, he said that he thinks Elon Musk or Tesla will build 1 billion Optimus robots. He also said he believes there's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, humans to Optimus, not robots, Optimus. What does that mean? If you have a 1-to-1 ratio, and he thinks they're going to put out 1 billion Optimus, I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but speaks for a population of 1 billion people, right? Not 7 or 8. God knows. We don't know how many there are, really. We don't know if we can trust the census at all. But we know that reduction is a big part of the plan. We always land at the same question when we look at these trends. And this is really something that's important to me. Over the last years, I have seen so many people appear on the scene as commentators, alternative media channels, that I believe are good-hearted and have good intentions, but they don't have a solid foundation in research. And this is not to sound elitist in any way, but I've been researching and reading documents and reading government and non-NGO policies, policy documents, boring stuff, hundreds of pages, many, many books on the subjects for 25 plus years. And when you read those things so far ahead of time and you see them play out, you don't really care about the team that's bringing something in. It doesn't matter under which banner or flag or party something comes in, as long as it comes in. So the folks that have arrived recently on a research scene, they just see headlines and current news events, and they interpret it through a very limited lens because they just recently started to do that. And the last 5 years have been crazy. So who had the time to read books and hundreds and thousands of pages of documents? But if I look at what I'm looking at now, nothing has fundamentally changed in the plans for the world and how they're being executed. Like I said, different teams have appeared, as they always do. Different names have appeared, but fundamentally the direction hasn't changed at all, like not even a little bit. What has changed is the bifurcation that we talk about, where a large number of people are so unaware, they just live on autopilot like they always have. And then a really growing number of people do not anymore. They are awakening more and more and more, and they're just taking charge and control over one aspect after another in their lives. And this is the only thing that you can do, is to become this best version of yourself. There's no direct way for you to stop the new world order or interfere in this grandiose way, but there is a grandiose way for you to positively influence the whole by living this best life that you can, and by focusing on that, by focusing on building your life in a way that it's autonomous, that it's sovereign in as much as you can, maybe community, all the things that we've been talking about for so long. um, in the end, at the end of the day, if you will, what is always competing, it's visions. And the strongest visions are imprinted on the field and reflected back as a consensus reality, as a shared reality. And this consensus, this shared reality, isn't solid any longer. It's not what it used to be, like we talked about. It's fragmented now. So you don't have this unified look on reality. You have a fragmented look on reality, which is challenging and troublesome in some ways, but it's promising in other ways because it means that people are changing their inner picture. And that means you have to go through chaos, you have to go through doubt, you have to go through grief, you have to go through pain because one belief is dying or is being transmuted, and a more open way of looking at things can appear. And so, there's no fear in presenting this. There's no fear in looking at this information. There's just sort of a neutrality of going, okay, this is what they've always been about, and this is what they're still about. It's what they're still doing. And people used to follow them blindly, and now many don't anymore. This is where hope lies, if you will. But more importantly, no one can have control over you unless you rescind it, you give it. No one can take your autonomy unless you're willing to give it. And I'm not saying there isn't a price to pay. There's always a price to pay. Like there always is. But this is where the rubber meets the road, if you will. And this is where we are. And if we could accept the fact that the forces are doing what the forces have always been doing, and they're just doing that. That's what their purpose is. Whether we agree with it or not doesn't matter. That's just what they're here for. And if that doesn't align with you, well, then ask yourself, what is yours, right? Why are you here? What's important to you? What matters to you? It's about individual agency, right? It's about discovering who you truly are and acting accordingly. And I get pretty much the biggest backlash I get on this message that I share every day, but I get the biggest backlash because people say, well, we can't because we're in this situation, and we can't because we don't have the money, or we can't. Well, if there really is a deep desire for something, if you really have a clear knowing that a different path is the right path for you, then a way always appears. This has been proven over and over again. This is how co-creation works. But if you're stuck in the I can't, it's impossible, Jean, you don't understand my circumstances, I don't have the means, I don't have the family, I don't have the support system. Yeah, well, neither did we. And so many other people. Most folks that have carved out a different path for themselves, most folks didn't start with having everything at their disposal. They began to understand the power of the co-creatorship, the power of their vision power, of knowing who they are, of knowing how powerful they are in terms of creating their individual reality bubble. So I take this as inspiration. What we can take as inspiration is these folks are, they're disciplined. They continually show up. They change their narratives. They change their names. They change their appearance. They change the tactics, but their core visions remain the same. That's disciplined. I completely disagree. I think it's the completely wrong path. I think it always ends the same way. It always ends in a cataclysmic event. But don't take my opinion for it. Sort of tune in with your spirit, tune in with your intuition, tune in with your heart, see what your heart tells you. But we can at least see that these folks are disciplined, and that's something that we can be as well, in sort of our own way, and not about fighting this. about choosing something else if we wish to. And the way that this was all set up is if you don't choose, that's a choice too. And then someone will choose for you. You know, that's how the system was set up. So you have to be proactive in your choices. And I'm just, you know, I'm sending out all the love to you guys, because I know one of these days, you know, you will hear something, see something, an idea will hit you, and you'll hit the ground running, and you'll never look back. And it's a different moment for everyone, but it's happening for more and more people. It's happening faster than ever before, and beautiful things are transpiring because of it. People are doing wonderful things in the world, are helping each other, are becoming the best possible version of themselves, and are creating lives that are so filled with joy and love and beauty that they can't be phased any longer by dark psychopathic quotes from the World Economic Forum. I think that's a good thing. All right, friends, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. You know, we love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.